Welcome to the first in a series of short videos aimed at demonstrating how easy it is to install and configure Customizer Lite. I'm David Bell, Senior Development Manager and a member of the squad responsible for the Customizer technology at HCL Software. Other video series exist that demonstrate how to use the Customizer technology once it is set up, but the focus of this series is specifically on deploying the necessary components for the Customizer Lite deployment model. The series is divided into 5 parts as listed here, with the first being an introduction to Customizer Lite for those who might not already know about it. It is a variation on the standard Customizer deployment that is part of the Connections component pack. Parts 2 through 5 will be more of a hands-on installation and configuration walkthrough to help guide you through the process. As you will see in the videos, Customizer Lite is designed to be simple. With the arrival of Connections CR6, an enhancement was made to the Customizer Lite implementation to allow it to be deployed in a more highly available topology. Part 5 of the series will provide the details you need to upgrade a typical implementation to this HA variation. We hope you find this content interesting and helpful. Now let's get on with the rest of Part 1. What is Customizer Lite? Customizer overall is a set of services that allow for any Connections customer to customize their Connections deployment. Customizations include adding extra functionality, hiding functionality, changing layout, and theming. The Connections Visual Update theme is a good example that makes use of and demonstrates the Customizer capabilities. Because the changes are stored independently of the core Connections code, they are not overwritten during an upgrade cycle and persist across versions, reducing effort in reapplying the changes each time an upgrade is performed. The Customizer component is one of the core services of the Connections component pack and can be installed and configured using the component pack installation and configuration scripts. The component pack deployment model is based on Docker images, Kubernetes container orchestration, and with MongoDB and Redis for data storage. This adds some complexity to the typical Connections environment. The idea behind the Customizer Lite deployment model, which is the focus of this series, was a much simpler implementation suitable for trying out the customization capabilities with minimal requirements. It was ideal for proof of concept or small-scale deployments. So how does Customizer Lite achieve this simplified deployment model? It was originally designed to run as a single instance of each of the necessary services on a single Docker host. This minimized the need for additional hardware and configuration. A single physical or virtual machine with 4 cores and 8 GB of memory. Perhaps the biggest simplification compared to the standard Customizer deployment is that it does not require Kubernetes, MongoDB, or Redis, and so those technologies do not have to be installed or managed. However, without a Kubernetes cluster and orchestration of multiple instances of the services, the Customizer components can become single points of failure that impact access to Connections if they have a problem. So while the Lite model was great for proof of concept, it was not robust enough for a full production deployment. With the arrival of Connections CR6, that gap has been addressed with a deployment model called Customizer Lite HA. In this model, multiple instances of the services can be deployed on separate hosts, but importantly, they still do not require Kubernetes, MongoDB, and Redis. There is now a path from the Customizer Lite POC implementation all the way up to the full component pack deployment, with the stepping stone of Customizer Lite HA in between. Part 5 of the video series is dedicated to showing how to go from a POC-style deployment to a more resilient HA deployment by adding in additional service instances. This diagram illustrates the components that make up the Customizer Lite deployment model. They are added to an existing Connections environment, shown here on the right. First of all, we add a physical or virtual host on which to run the Docker engine and Docker Compose. Docker Compose takes the place of Kubernetes as a more lightweight container management tool. The 3 services that make up the Customizer functionality are deployed as Docker images that can be configured, started, and stopped under the control of Docker Compose. Lastly, in order to be able to filter and direct requests on which customizations are delivered to Customizer, while allowing other requests to go directly to Connections, Nginx or a comparable proxy/load balancer is used. Let's take a look at those 3 services in just a little more detail. The App Registry Client service provides the administrator with a user interface in which to manage the customization definitions for their Connections environment. Definitions are created, updated, enabled, disabled, and removed using this UI. The example here shows two customization definitions, both enabled, one relating to the home page and one relating to blogs. The App Registry Service provides two primary functions. It provides the APIs that the App Registry client uses to create, update, and remove the definitions in the persistent storage. It also provides the APIs that the MW Proxy Services use to query which customizations are enabled for the environment and which custom files are to be used for each specific customization. Even if the App Registry client is not accessible for some reason, such that administrators could not change the definition stored in the App Registry Service, customizations would still be rendered to end users. The MW Proxy Service inspects the responses that flow through it from connections and determines, based on the customization definitions stored in the App Registry Service, whether it should inject references to the custom JavaScript and style sheet files specified by the enabled customization definitions. It can use a variety of criteria such as request URL path, user email address, or group membership to decide whether to include the customization or not. In that sense, different customizations can be shown to different users for the same requests. This can be very handy for A/B testing or other activities where the scope of visibility needs to be limited to a subset of users. This is the core function of the Customizer technology as it relates to the MW Proxy Service. Customizer is the overall name, but MW Proxy is the actual name of the running service and associated Docker image. To finish off this first part introduction, this diagram illustrates the general flow of requests between the various components in the Customizer Lite deployment model. With a single set of services on a single Docker host, this is very straightforward. An administrator using the application registry client makes the request via the Connections HTTP server, which is proxied to the App Registry client service. API calls from the browser to create, update, or remove a customization definition in the App Registry service also follow the same flow, but to the App Registry service. For end-user requests to connections for which no customizations are to be used, those requests are proxied via Nginx directly to the Connections HTTP server. For end-user requests where customizations are expected, Nginx proxies those requests to the MW Proxy Service to be handled accordingly. That concludes part 1 of this series on deploying Customizer Lite. Hopefully it was useful in laying a foundational understanding of the technology and components. To get started on deploying Customizer, jump right into part 2, installing a Docker machine. This was David Bell, Senior Development Manager at HCL Software. Goodbye, and I look forward to speaking to you again in part 2.